The Catalyst, a CEP podcast on bold leadership in the Ocala Metro. Hosted by the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership. Sponsored by Douglas Law Firm. And recorded live at Wiley Productions Podcast Studios, located in Ocala, Florida. Welcome to The Catalyst. I'm your host, Natalie McComb, Vice President for the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership Foundation, and I'm joined today by Kent Guinn, Mayor for the City of Ocala. Welcome to the show, Kent.
Thank you, Natalie. Great to be here.
So you have a long history of public service to the City of Ocala, 12 years on City Council representing District 4, followed by more than a decade as our mayor. So in your opinion, what makes this town so special?
Well, I'm a fifth generation Ocalan, so I've grown up here, and seen it a long time before I got on council. I would just say the people. I was just telling the gentleman outside here about, being able to pick the phone up and say, hey, I've got a citizen that needs some help. Mm-hmm. And people just go, what do you got, Mayor? And, we work together, we solve problems. And, if you don't have that, if the community's not oriented, like that, things just don't work out. I talk to, other cities around the country and tell them about how easy governments and, public partnerships and things like that happen. And they're like, we don't really work like that.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank, whatever city it may be. We have problems dealing with, other city governments, county governments and such. So yeah, we're fortunate to have people that are very compassionate and caring.
Yeah, for sure. And most in our town may just know you as mayor, particularly a lot of those who have more recently moved to Ocala. Sure. But you also own a local business. So tell us more about that experience. So
back in 1982, I got in the insurance business, and I've been doing that for, 41 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, doing business and estate planning for, professionals, business owners, things like that. Yeah, for sure. And as you mentioned, you're a fifth generation Ocalian, am I saying that right? Yep, that's
Ocalian.
Correct.
Which means that you and your family have certainly seen a lot of change and a lot of progress in town over the years. What improvement to specifically the downtown area do you think has been the most impactful?
Well, I'll touch on your question and kind of tie it in is, probably that hotel that happened was a real catalyst for the growth in downtown. Back in 1967, there was a hotel there that was torn down. And my father got about, I can't remember how many bricks, but it was about 5,000 bricks. And my job between the 7th grade and 10th grade was to clean bricks in the afternoon.
Oh, wow.
For the house he was going to build when we moved. And so I did all that. I would invite friends over and say, hey, you want to clean bricks? I'll give you a penny a brick. No, Ken, I'll pass on that.
So you started a business, if you will, right?
Kind of. But no. So we grew up here, and my father was in the printing business, and watched him work real hard and sacrifice, and you don't realize the things your parents did until you get older and kind of think, wow, they did that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great. It was great living in Ocala.
Yeah, wonderful.
Growing up.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that certainly, in your position as mayor, you've had to be involved in a lot of different things, but your service to boards, organizations, nonprofits over the years really started before that. As mayor, certainly you've been involved with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and organizations that focus on criminal justice, substance abuse, and juvenile issues. But one in particular that you've had a long history of service for is Children's Home Society. Right. And I understand that has a personal connection for you. Can you explain that a little bit further?
Yeah, it does. I was adopted. So back in 1954, my mother, who was an unwed mother that lived up in kind of Corning, New York area, got pregnant, and 19-year-old unwed girls aren't supposed to be pregnant, in 1954. And so her doctor somehow knew about Children's Home Society, and they said, Norma, just go to Jacksonville, and Children's Home Society will take care of you, and you can have the baby and come back home, and, we'll say you went to secretarial school or whatever. And so she did that, and I was born. It was Baptist Hospital, which became Wilson's Children's Medical Center shortly thereafter. And so 4 months, someone took care of me after I was born, and they adopted me, and they had adopted my sister through CHS before that. So came to Ocala.
Wow, and created your family, really.
Yeah, and served on their board from, state board from like 1990 to, I can't remember. When I became mayor, I think I got off their board. It was just, I didn't have the time to do it. So, but still was on the division board, but yeah, enjoyed it. So I thought, I should obviously give back to the organization that, gave me life.
Yeah. Yeah, and for those who may not be aware of Children's Home Society, we'll be sure to include a link on the episodes page so you can learn a little bit more about that organization. So one of your major responsibilities as mayor is overseeing the Ocala Police Department, which you have partnered with on a number of programs. Anyone in particular that you're most proud of that you want to highlight today?
I would probably say, Chief Graham did this program. It was the amnesty program. We worked with the billboard companies, and we had this campaign talking about addiction's not a crime, and we were encouraging people to come in if they needed help, just to walk in and go, look, I'm done. I can't live like this anymore. I need some help. And we would take them at no cost to the centers at the time. And, they would go into rehab for 90 days and, come out the other side, hopefully successful. Now we have the hospital district that's partnered and done that with us. We have, a variety of places to take people now. But I would probably say that that saved a lot of lives. And I would probably say that's one of the great things that we did.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I'm sure as you've had some successes with programs like that and initiatives that thankfully other communities have learned from or taken as a model, I'm sure not all those moments have been easy. So what have you found the most challenging as mayor and being in that position?
Well, it's something we're working on kind of right now with the chronic homeless. That's been a real problem. There are, people that have mental illnesses, but we need, and the state needs to build more mental institutions to get people off the street and get them the help that they need. And then there's the truly homeless that, and I'll talk about, Open Arms Village in a second. But, that's one component. But then the chronic homeless, and that's the ones you see, in L.A., San Francisco, that we see on TV with the tents all over the street and just the, filth and the drugs and things like that they live in. That's been a real problem, to deal with. We're dealing with it, but we've got a 3-man task force that's all they do is deal with that.
What's really your favorite part of the job? What gets you coming in and you say, you know what, I really like this, and it makes you come into City Hall every day just energized for the next?
Well, I mean, I love when the phone rings and people say, hey, Mayor, I need your help.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, what do you got?
Yeah.
It's a project, it's something to work on and things like that. And that's one of the things I was talking to a gentleman outside earlier, that I can pick the phone up and say, hey, Natalie, I'm working on this. Or, hey, Scott Quintel, when he was at United Way, I've got a problem. I need your help.
Yeah.
And just the resources and the people that just jump in and try to help you solve problems, So I've got a thing on my desk, talks about, it was from Reagan, talks about there's no limit to where a man can go if he's not worried about, who gets the credit. And I'm always
so true. Yeah.
Care less who gets the credit. It's like, this is the project. Let's jump in and get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a great position to be in. And are there any advice that you would have for other leaders in this community who may be considering running for a public office?
Well, I would say, I've said this before, if you don't genuinely care about the people you serve, I mean, like really care about them, you shouldn't be in that position. If you're doing it just, you want to climb the ladder and, go to the next, level in politics, or that's all that is, it's not for you.
Yeah.
You've got to be willing to ride around the middle of the night and, find out, why someone's electric, not on. You got to meet people in the middle of the night when their son's, wanting to get in the, recovery program. You got to be able to, to do all that. That was one of Greg's, 5 rules, was look for ways to say yes, have fun at your job. If you make a mistake doing the right thing, don't worry about it. We'll fix it. Ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Just means if you see something that needs to be done, just do it.
Yeah.
And don't, hey, boss, can I do this?
Right.
Like your boss is going to go, God, you're killing me.
Yeah, you don't need permission to do the right thing.
Just do your job.
Yeah.
You see something needs to be done, do it.
Yep.
So that's one of the great things about being the mayor is, I don't answer to anybody except for the public. So every 2 years they get to decide if I'm doing a good job or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
And you referenced it that you made the decision not to run for re-election this year. And with your final term as mayor of Ocala coming to a close later this year, do you have any thoughts on what's next?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, I'm talking to probably 3, 4, 5 people about, what's next. So, but I don't want to really say right now, but yeah.
Not ready to slow down quite yet?
No, I just think I've got a lot more to offer. So I'm going to, spend some time, solving problems.
What's one nonprofit organization that you'd like to highlight today and why?
Well, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but just to get a little bit more in depth is the Open Arms Village. That we started, which was kind of a partnership, and people really got together to do that. Father Pat, Carla Grimsley, Steve Hoestry with Brothers Keepers, just a bunch of people. They're not even here now.
Yeah.
And these are men, and now we're expanding it to women. But these are men who were homeless, like I was talking about, maybe even chronic homeless, on the street, in the woods, that have come to us and said, you know what, I just can't live like this anymore. I need some help. And here's the difference. And I'm willing to do all the things that are necessary to get myself out of this situation. And I want you to hold me accountable. And so we do that. So our success rate is about 85%. When they leave, they have thousands of dollars in the bank because they don't pay anything to live there at the church. And they have a full-time job, and so they've gone from I have nothing, I'm on the street, to I have, full-time job, thousands of dollars, and place to live.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that, I mean, the difference in them and, excuse me, some of the other ones that you see is they're willing to do what's necessary to do it.
Right. They're willing to accept the help that's being provided.
A lot of people want what these men have achieved, but they're just not willing to do the things that are required to get there.
That's wonderful. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Open Arms Village, we will be including a link on the episode's page so you can click and learn a little bit more about the great work that they're doing. And now a word from our sponsor.
Hello, this is Jeremiah Blocker with the Douglas Law Firm. We are a full-service law firm with many practice areas to serve your particular needs. We are located in downtown Ocala at 110 North Magnolia Avenue. Coming from a 7th-generation family here in Ocala, I am honored for our law firm to partner with the CEP to bring you these podcasts. We hope you enjoy.
So now's the fun part of the interview. We're getting into the lightning round questions. All righty, ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So what advice would you give to yourself at age 15?
At age 15, I was just starting, I think, the 10th grade, I would say, and I was playing a lot of golf. I would say study real hard.
Yeah.
School should be your, entire focus of your life.
You mean it wasn't? Golf was a little up there?
Golf was at the top of my list. I would study, but I
Yeah.
mean, I would just say, it's a short period of time, high school, to do really, really well in their study. Go to your counselor, and knock their door down. Hey, tell me this, tell me that, and get yourself on the right track,
Yeah.
to whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's law or own a business or electrician, plumber, whatever it may be that you want to do. Just get really, really focused. All that partying and all that stuff, that'll,
Yeah. Come and go.
that comes and goes. You got the next, 40, 50 years of your life to live.
Yeah.
And all of that makes a difference in how you're going to live the rest of it.
And how would you describe yourself in one word?
Humble. People see people in my position and they think, oh, well, he's, on the news or this or that, but that's just part of the job. I mean, I think it's very humbling that, and I'll tell you a piece of advice that I got. It's very humbling that, anybody would want to have your picture, their picture taken with you. Gerald Urkel, Mayor Urkel, when I became mayor, said, hey, Mayor, is there any advice you could give me? He goes, yeah. He said, don't think you're as important as others think you are. I didn't really get that until right after the Christmas parade, a little girl came, Ralph D'Amelio's daughter.
Small world, right?
Fast forward
Yeah.
12 years, said, oh, can I have my picture taken with you? It's like, sure.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm thinking to myself, why would she want her picture taken with me? And I told the Mayor Urkel that, and he goes, make it a big deal for them, because to them it's a big deal.
What was your first job, and what did you learn from that experience?
The first real job was working for Augie Griner at Griner's Men's Store when I was in 11th grade, and but learned a lot from him. I mean, he was like my second dad. Don't judge of all things. Don't judge people by the clothes that they wear. And I learned that in the banking business. We saw people that had chewing tobacco all over them, and boots and that were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Talk to everyone. Augie would talk to anybody. They'd walk in the store. He would, hey, Mr. Steinbrenner, how are you? And I was like, that's George Steinbrenner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I help you with? And just, hey, how's family? How's this? How's that? And so, talk to everyone. That's one of the things I learned. Don't ever be afraid, to talk to people. They're people just like you and I, and, they got problems. And, I'll tell you a quick story. I had called John Malone, welcomed him to Ocala. They bought Bridlewood Farm. And so fast forward a couple of years after that, I saw him at Chester Weber's event, and somebody invited me over to the table where he was, and I said, you probably don't remember me. And he goes, remember you? He said, I talk about you often. I go, really? He goes, yeah. And he said, most places I go, the first two people that call me are the property appraiser and the tax collector.
Wow.
Because he's the largest landowner
Yeah.
in the country. He said, in Ocala, Florida, he said, the mayor calls me and thanks me for coming.
Yeah.
I said, great.
Yeah. But that's the impression you made. I
Yeah,
mean,
but,
how important that is.
He, but obviously very, successful man, but, you can talk to him, and I would advise young people, people in general, don't be afraid to, talk to people that are, in positions of, authority, whatever it is.
And who is a leader you admire?
Jared that runs Signature Brands. I played golf with him before and talked to him and just watched, how he's, worked at Signature Brands, and he's great about, asking his executives. He doesn't tell them what to do; he lets them figure it out for themselves. He's great at asking questions and letting themselves lead them to, the answer, that they need to, where they need to be. Super involved in the community, strong advocate of United Way, and everything they're doing over there. Strong families, very involved in. But I mean, he's just the kind of leader that you look for. And I will tell you one thing that's really important to me is with the neighborhood that I grew up in is on the northeast side of town. Tough neighborhood. And that's why I cleaned those bricks to get out of that neighborhood. I drive by there every once in a while, look around, and actually it's within about 75 yards of Open Arms Village, which was kind of,
meaningful.
Yeah, to come back in that neighborhood and do that, 75 yards from where I grew up. But, it was a tough neighborhood. You learn, don't ever let anybody intimidate you, and you have to learn that in politics. And I think, growing up in a neighborhood like that, has helped me, in public life. But we need to have like more people that don't agree with each other actually find some common ground.
Yep, come together.
Yeah, I mean, I'll use some names here. Some people that didn't live here, they might not know, but guys like Buddy McKay was our lieutenant governor, was governor for 3 weeks under Lawton Chiles. Jimmy Williams was our lieutenant governor, lived here. They're Democrats, I'm Republican, but we need to have more people that agree on things, find a common ground.
Because there's more that we agree on than we don't, and to let those things we disagree on define the narrative and prevent us from coming into any kind of consensus for the community. No one's benefiting from that.
Well, and that's why I think local government works so well.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Yeah.
In Tallahassee and Washington, not so much. So yeah, we need more of that because the people here in local government are closer to the people than Tallahassee and Washington. We see them in Publix, right? We see them at church.
They're your neighbors.
Yeah, your neighbors. It's like, hey, what about my electric bill? What about this? Yeah. When are you getting the stop sign over there, this street or that street?
You're the neighbor that can solve the problem, right? Or at least figure out how to solve the problem, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
When's the mosquito truck coming by? I just got that text earlier.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor Guinn, for being on The Catalyst today. We really appreciated your time.
All right. Glad to be here. Great questions, and thank you a lot for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Catalyst, hosted by the Ocala Metro Chamber and Economic Partnership, sponsored by Douglas Law Firm, and recorded live at Wiley Productions Podcast Studios. New episodes, guests, and perspectives on leadership premiere twice a month. Follow us on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Have a suggestion for a future guest? Email us at thecatalyst@ocalacep.com.